Hello and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh Sports Memories. I'm your host, Steve Wharton. As usual, I'm joined with my co-host,
Tim Hannon.
And today the two of us are going to go over overtime. We're going into overtime. Tim, are we getting paid time and a half for this? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Time and a half on our regular salary of zero.
Yeah. What's zero times time and a half?
Well,
Still zero.
So we're definitely we're working overtime. So there's nothing more exciting than overtime. It's all on the line, especially in like playoff games. And all of a sudden, whether it's sudden death or it comes out of nowhere. These endings seem to come out of nowhere. And so some of these games we've gone over maybe in the course of other episodes of our podcast, but this is just the overtime part. So we'll just do a short synopsis, kind of how we got here, and then we'll do the moment, and we'll probably have a couple clips, and then the aftermath of that moment. So without further introduction, let's jump right into it. And the first overtime game is now not all these memories are this sad, but some of them are. This one's kind of, I think, a sad one. So the Steelers-Denver game, the Tim Tebow game. I didn't write down. Do you remember what year that was, Tim? Was that 2000?
It was 2011. I remember this because Tim Tebow just posted on his Facebook page or something that was following him that it was the 10-year anniversary of this play just recently.
Nice. Well, just a little background. The Steelers go 12-4, and I think we covered this a little bit in the Steelers-Denver rivalry series. They have to play a road game in Denver without Ryan Clark because Ryan Clark doesn't want. Well, Ryan Clark wanted to play, but Dan Rooney, being the wise, he's a good owner and just a general good person, would not let him play because of his sickle cell disease, and it would be a bad look for the NFL and the Steelers in general if Ryan Clark died. So. And it would be bad for Ryan Clark too. So a lot of reasons that Ryan Clark couldn't play this game. Nevertheless, the Broncos are 8-8, but they had home field, and you say, well, wait a minute, how does an 8-8 team get home field over 12-4? It's due that the Steelers did not win their division, and the Broncos did, and that AFC West wasn't that strong that year. So we'll fast forward to this wild card game. We're going to go. The Broncos had a 20-6 lead in the game, but the Steelers came all the way back, and they had tied it at the end of regulations with 23-23. And this is the first game to be played as a non-sudden death format for overtime, which is now, I guess, the way they have it now, where if you score a touchdown, it's sudden, the game's over. But if you kick a field goal, it's not, because, Brett Favre can't be sent home like that. So it really doesn't matter, because Tim Tebow completes his 10th pass of the game. This is in overtime. So at that point, Tim Tebow had completed 9 passes in 60 minutes of football. He completed it to the late Demaryius Thomas, and it goes for 80 yards in the game-winning touchdown. And here we'll go and listen to the scope of this.
Tim Tebow gets his first chance, first pass, first play of the new overtime. Tebow, Demaryius touchdown, wraps it up, one and done. John Owen can't believe it.
So as you can hear, the NFL primetime crew had a lot of fun at kind of the Steelers' expense there. I guess not too much. They were more celebrating Tim Tebow than sticking it to the Steelers. So, but it still kind of sucks that that's the way that game ended, and that Ryan Mundy got totally fooled chasing the ball on that. I mean, It really wasn't Ike Taylor's fault. He really should have had safety help, but I don't know. That was so that led to a lot of aftermath. So the aftermath is the Broncos went up to New England the next week. And gee, how do you think that worked out for them, Tim?
Yeah, not well.
Yeah, so they got blown out, and it just kind of proved that Tebow wasn't a very good NFL quarterback. Once again, he literally completed 10 passes. They kind of ran like that option offense. And actually, after that, Tebow never really played in the NFL again, really. So he went to a couple other teams, and he kept trying to be a quarterback. I think at that point, if he would have switched right then to tight end, he would have been the next Rob Gronkowski. I still think that. I know, like, you know, this like last offseason where he's in Jacksonville, he looked pretty bad, but I think, like, you know, somebody would have given him more than like one offseason to, you know, have a chance to prove himself, and he would have been a lot younger, and, you know, just all that. And I really still think that Tebow would have been a really good tight end if he would have switched after this first year. But so the Broncos, they go on and they get a real quarterback, like some guy named Peyton Manning. And then once they get Peyton Manning, they win a Super Bowl. And they made another Super Bowl appearance because they had a really good defense. And that was kind of Peyton Manning. He was at the end. He's at the Ben now stage of his career of like 2022, you know, like where he's okay and can kind of get you a few passes, but, you know, he's not going to win you the game just by himself. So the Steelers, for their, you know, side of the story, they really haven't made the play. They have made the playoffs, but they haven't really seen a lot of playoff success then. I think they've only really, what'd you say, that was 2011, 2012? So, like, what, they've won 2 playoff games since then? Miami and Kansas City, that's it, right?
The Cincinnati game, too. 3.
Oh, so 3, yeah.
Yeah.
So they really haven't had a lot of success since that playoff game. So
yeah, we like you said, we talked about it in that Denver episode. That was disappointing because I maintain to this day that they had a better team in 2011 than the team that made the Super Bowl in 2010. But they got injured. They had a ton of injuries coming into that game and during that game. And even if they would have pulled that out in overtime, they would have been kind of hosed for the next week. But they also didn't have Ryan Clark. And like you kind of alluded to, Steve, that ended up being the dagger on that final play, not having him at safety. So it is what it is. It stunk. Good for Tim Tebow. Good for the late Demaryius Thomas. But it was not a good memory for Steeler fans.
Yeah, well, shifting gears to a happier overtime moment. And we just covered this in our podcast on the Winter Classic. So the Winter Classic with Sidney Crosby. A quick background, in 2008, the NHL decides to have a big event game to try and improve the visibility of the league. They put a game outside on New Year's Day. This is a day normally reserved for college bowl games. So what does the league do? They want to hype. Of course, you want to hype your biggest young star at the time, Sidney Crosby. The Penguins had sucked up to that point, not really. And they had made the playoffs the year before, but had gotten eliminated pretty handily in the first round. The Sabres, for their part, it was Buffalo and Pittsburgh in Buffalo, and Ralph Wilson or whatever, Highmark Stadium or whatever it's called this week. I don't know what it was called back then. They have Ryan Miller. They had lost Daniel Briere and a couple other players the year before. So going into overtime, the Penguins scored really early, like in the first minute. And do you remember who first scored that first goal? Maybe it's fresh in your memory, everyone, right? It's Colby Armstrong. Yay. Who didn't know he scored in the Winter Classic? Buffalo scored to tie the game in the second period. The game stayed tied. The ice really was in bad shape. I remember in the third period, they'd stopped the game a couple times. Like one of the Zambonis got frozen. So Ty Conklin made some really big saves in the shootout. And Letang, like, this is like Letang's, I don't know if that's his, like, it's definitely early on in Chris Letang's career, but he took a shootout. He scored a big goal to keep it going because I think the Sabres had scored a goal to take a lead. And so Ty Conklin keeps us in, and then of course Sidney Crosby ends the game with a beautiful goal over Ryan Miller, which we'll listen to right here.
1 for 5 this year, 8 for 26. The game on his stick right here. Score! Penguins win! Snow flying in their faces as they celebrate. As kids, they might have done 20 years or so ago in a 2-on-2 game. This was not that.
And Doc Emmerich, of course, is awesome. So it's a great call.
I miss Doc.
Moment. Yeah. So Doc was awesome there. And that was a lot of fun. And it kind of like we said before, that kind of launched the Penguins' run of success, even up to this year. Yeah, they had a little lull there, and we'll go over that a little later in the podcast. But the aftermath, Buffalo doesn't make the playoffs, even with 90 points for the season. The Pens do make the Cup Finals, but they lose to the Red Wings. The NHL goes absolutely crazy with Winter Classic and Stadium Series outdoor games. They seem to have played them everywhere from Reno to, LA. And so who knows where maybe they'll play one in Hawaii in a volcano next. I don't know. So going back to disappointing Steeler overtime losses, but the Steelers have a lot more disappointment over time than success, it seems. I don't know. Steelers versus Titans. I call this the Joe Nedney game. This is from 2002. So just the lead up, Tommy Maddox had a great year, and the Steelers made the divisional round of the playoffs against the Titans. They had a big comeback against Cleveland the week before. But in this game, the Steelers and Titans, they go to overtime, and the Titans line up for a short field goal. And Bill Cowher, he calls a timeout. The fireworks go off. It's like a 5-minute delay. It's like the best case scenario for icing a kicker. So on the next attempt, Joe Nedney, who had made the practice attempt when they called the timeout, he misses the kick. But for some reason, Dwayne Washington definitely lightly bumped him, but why would you even be within a yard of him? So Nedney, I always felt kind of backed into him, because if you could see, if you watch this replay, Nedney turns around and literally leans into him, I think. But they call it roughing the kicker or running into the kicker. No, I think they call roughing the kicker. And on the third attempt, he gets a third attempt after missing that one. If he would have missed that, the Steelers would have got the ball back on offense and maybe could have kicked the field goal. Since this was the old-fashioned, overtime, NFL overtime rules, nobody cared about Tommy Maddox not getting the ball in overtime. So on the third attempt, Nedney nails the kick, and the Steelers' season is over. So here's that process of events.
One would guess Cowher will spend a timeout here and let Nedney think about it. It will be a 31-yard attempt.
Yeah, there's Pittsburgh calling for a timeout.
No play. But he got a warm-up kick, which isn't all bad either.
And he made it. Look at Nedney laugh. Yeah, the skyrocket guy. Hey, boys, it didn't count.
Well, now it sets off the one at the other end.
Unbelievable.
Pyrotechnical prematurity.
Nice one.
We're laughing about this, but you couldn't ask for anything to make it tougher on Joe Nedney than these fireworks going off. It's kind of funny for everybody else, but I don't think this is very funny for Joe Nedney.
Well, here's his chance. They'll spot it again at the 21, the 31-yard field goal by Nedney to advance to the AFC Championship. No!
They knocked him down! Nedney got roughed!
Nedney misses, and then a penalty flag down where he kicked the ball.
It's running into the kicker, number 20, defense, 5 yards.
If Joe Nedney does this kick, Jeff Fisher's going to be in a tough spot.
He makes this one, and Tennessee advances to the championship game.
think Bill Coward is telling Ron Blum, you cost us a game by calling that penalty. Boy, Bill Coward is upset.
So that's some really. Who was the color guy? I recognize him, but
Dan Dierdorf.
That was Dierdorf. Okay, that was some Steeler hate there. Am I reading into that, Tim? Or he was way too excited that Nedney got roughed, and he was really mad that Nedney had to kick it a third. I didn't realize that even when I listened to it just listen to it just now. I was like, wow, that was some classic Steeler. He was really excited, and then. You couldn't see it. Obviously, you can't see it. This is not a visual, but Cowher ran and got in like the referee's face, and that was Ferrier there had to pull him away.
Yeah. And Cowher had a right to be upset. It was a ticky-tack call because Washington dove, and Nedney, like you said, kind of almost fell into him. I think Nedney even joked about like
he said
an Oscar.
Yeah.
I mean,
he turns around. He literally turns around and leans into him. Now it's Washington's fault for being there.
It is,
but like at the same time, like okay, so I'm a kicker and I miss a kick. I'm finding a defensive player and running into him.
It's a ticky tack call to have the whole season ride on you making that call. But to your point, Steve, like Dwayne Washington wasn't going to block that kick. I hate that. Like the Steelers, there was a game a couple of years ago where they lost a game to the Chargers the same way. Do you remember that? It was like it wasn't overtime, but it was the end of regulation where the Chargers missed the game-winning field goal, but we ran into the kicker or we were offsides, I think, actually.
It was offsides, yeah.
But it's like you're not going to block the kick. He's either going to make it or he's going to miss it. And if you're going to block it, you're definitely not going to do it coming off the edge.
No, it's always up the middle. Yeah. And you can't jump. You can't, remember people used to get a running start and jump over the line.
You can't
do any of that anymore, yeah.
So just let him kick. And he missed. And so ticky-tack call, I get why Cowher was upset, but I still think that's on Dwayne because it just – and the Steelers, the way that game was going, it was what, 34-34 in overtime, Steve?
I think,
31-31. It was 30.
That was the game. Like Jeff Reed had kicked like a bunch of field goals that barely went through, if I remember correctly. They went through, but they weren't confidence inspiring. That's for sure.
Well, the way that game was going, it was going to be last team with the ball wins.
Yeah.
Or in the case of overtime, the team that won the coin toss was going to win.
Yeah.
So if he misses that kick, I really think the Steelers would have driven down the field and won the game. So it hurt. The Steelers weren't great that year. They had a terrible defense, but they had this like Tommy Maddox inspired, score 30 points every game offense. And who knows what would happen. I mean, the team that won the Super Bowl that year was Tampa Bay, and the Steelers had shut them down like 3 weeks before that in Tampa. So who knows?
Yeah. See, you're getting into the good aftermath there. Yeah. The Steelers, actually, the Titans went on and they lost to the Raiders, and it was the Raiders played Tampa Bay in the Gruden Bowl, and Bill Callahan didn't change any of his signals or anything, so John Gruden knew exactly. It wasn't even – you can't even call it Spygate because, it's like John Gruden coached the Raiders. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You would think if you, once again, if I'm going in that situation, I literally keep everything the same except for, 1 or 2 calls, and then just at key moments change those calls just a little bit, But that's neither here nor there, and that's the Raiders' problem. But the Steelers don't go to the playoffs for a couple of years until they draft, some quarterback from Ohio named, Roethlisberger. I don't know who this guy is. Who knows if he'll ever be any good,
That Super Bowl 37, I always thought that would make a good documentary because Tim Brown actually came out at one point and said he thought Bill Callahan had this feud with Al Davis, and he wondered openly, publicly, if Bill Callahan did that on purpose.
Just through the Super Bowl.
Well, basically. I mean, I doubt it, but I would love to see someone just do a documentary delving into the conspiracy side of that because John Lynch said that
they knew their plays. Yeah, like if you watch the highlights, they're like silver, and like John Lynch's like, okay, he's going to run a slant. It's like, holy crap.
Right.
It's like,
right. I mean, if you were Bill Callahan and you were going to throw that game, the easiest way to do it without tipping off, because you can't. If you're the head coach, you couldn't do that by yourself. You would need all the players on board. So the easiest way to do that would be to not change any of the calls against the former coach. So I don't think that's what happened. I just on record saying I don't think that's what happened, but I would love to see like somebody explore that conspiracy theory and, put all the evidence up on it.
Like I said, you don't have to change every call. Like if you just change like 2 or 3 key calls, it totally like now they're not going to believe anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you don't have to change your whole offense. Just change it at like on a key third down. Like, okay, this key third down, we're doing the opposite or something, instead of saying we're going to go and like they're sitting on a slant, you're going to get their 7 points right there easily. And now John Lynch can't jump every route, or Dexter Jackson, I guess. Dexter Jackson was really the recipient of all this. He ended up signing for huge money and he never did anything after that Super Bowl.
Yeah. Bill Callahan was not a good thing for their franchise, but again, it's like you said, it's the Raiders. Who cares? Screw them.
You know what? I have a secret confession here, and this is like, don't tell anybody, even though I'm telling everybody. I love the Raiders. They're my second favorite team because you know why? Have I ever told you why I like the Raiders, Tim?
Because you want to get a lot of angry emails after this podcast.
Because they're pure, unadulterated evil. And you just don't get to see, and they don't care. They're not like New England, who's evil but tries to pretend to be good. No, they're just the bad guys. They're the bad guys, and they're the bad guys, and they're gonna be the bad guys. That's what they are. Silver and black. Just win, baby. The Raider rules: cheat is what. Raider rule 1 is cheat. Raider rule 2: if you're not cheating, you're not trying. I totally respect that. That's why I respect them way more than the Patriots. So, hey, just win, baby.
Well, I will say that they did put the Steelers into the playoffs this season, so I think a lot of people are not as hateful of the Raiders maybe at the current moment.
Sometimes you got to root for the bad guy. I mean, hey, yeah. But switching gears to a game that probably me and nobody else remember. I'm probably the only one that remembers this. We're going to USL Soccer, which if you said, what the heck is that? That would be the Soccer League of the United States. That's the second. It's like the second league. If MLS is the top league, this is the next league. And this would be the Bethlehem Steel and the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. And I was actually at this game. I attended this game. And the reason that it's weird is because like they went to 6 shooters into the shootout. This game. So the background there, the Riverhounds play in the USL, which is the second league. And the Riverhounds, they make the playoffs after they had missed some time, but they hired this coach, and he's still the coach there, Bob Lilly, who's like a legend at this level of soccer. He's won the whatever title, I guess they call it a USL championship title, but he's won there. But so Bethlehem Steel is the minor league team for the MLS team, the Philadelphia Union. The game goes to overtime after a goal by Ben Zemanski. The Hounds can't hold the lead. Bethlehem ties it in the 74th minute. In overtime in the 94th minute, the Riverhounds score, but because they don't play sudden death, they have to play like another 15 minutes. And so in the next, they play 2 15-minute overs. So in the next 15-minute overtime in the 108th minute on a free kick, and I remember it was from like kind of the top of the penalty area, which is like really tough to stop. This guy, Santi Moore, he scored to tie the game, and he literally banked it off the post, the side post, and went in. It was a pretty impressive kick. So they go to a shootout, and this is where it gets weird. It's like there's literally all 5 shooters score for each team. Like neither goalie, like, and the shootout was so great. Like it wasn't even like close upper corner. It was just like literally line up and kick the ball and it went in the net. And so it was literally going to come down to who missed a kick. And unfortunately, like it got down to like when you can't, like, it's not like hockey. Like remember like Balsma kept sending like, what's his name? The one guy from the Capitals just to keep doing his shootout, you have to go through your whole roster of players before you can repeat. So they got down to like some defensive player. The guy misses, and that's how Bethlehem wins. And it's just a weird, because I've never seen a game, like I've watched enough soccer now, like I've never seen a game go like 6 or 7 shooters like that before. But hey, minor league shot. It was a playoff, and that's how their season ended. So another kind of disappointing overtime sports moment for Pittsburgh. Although the aftermath, Bob Lilly, he had great success, and they've made the playoffs every year since that. And unfortunately, this year, due to a COVID outbreak, that cost them their season. They literally, it was weird. They just the league was like, nope, you're eliminated, you forfeit. So bad for the Riverhounds there. Bethlehem Steel, they actually moved out of Bethlehem. And they moved to the Chester, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philadelphia. I guess they moved closer to the Philadelphia Union team. So, hey, they have that going for them. We'll have a link to that if you want to watch. It's a rather lengthy clip, but you can watch the whole shootout and stuff if you're that into soccer. But that's just one of the weirder soccer things I've ever seen. So,
yeah, soccer shootouts can be wild because it's kind of easy to score. Like that's the problem, and not like hockey where you could have a bunch of guys get stopped in a row or a bunch of guys score in a row. So yeah, for it to go that long, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think too, because at this level, the goalie actually was a kid from Pitt. So. And he really wasn't. It wasn't even close, Tim. It wasn't like, oh, it just grazed off his finger. Like he literally was diving the wrong way, or he dived like 2 seconds too late. Like it was ugly. And the other goalie wasn't much better. Like it was bad. But well, moving back to American football, the Steelers versus Atlanta. Once again, it's 2002, the Tommy Maddox season. In this game, guess what? The Steelers don't lose this game, Tim. Yay!
Do they win, though?
No. So the background to this is Cordell Stewart got benched. It's the Tommy gun offense. Tommy Maddox is the quarterback, and the Steelers, like we said, are scoring points at will. But unfortunately, the defense gives up points as quick as the offense scores them. Atlanta has this guy named Michael Vick, and it's Michael Vick in his prime, so he's really tough to stop. So the game goes to overtime. Vick rallies the Falcons from 17 points down in the fourth quarter. And after this offensive explosion, you figure, somebody would score in the overtime. The offensive actually went silent, and the score stayed tied. And there was a wild sequence to end the game. With 2 minutes left in overtime, Maddox throws an interception. And the Falcons, 2002, so I guess it's still early on in Heinz Field. People hadn't, I don't know, was Reeves still the coach? Yeah, I guess Dan Reeves was still, it might have been Dan Reeves who was still the coach. The late Dan Reeves. He tried a 56-yard field goal, which was just impossible especially back then in Heinz Field. And until they miss, but they give the Steelers great field position, and they try to Hail Mary to Plexico Burress, and unfortunately he's tackled short of the end zone. We have some audio from this.
It's time for one Hail Mary. There's 1 second on the clock. Atlanta is 5 men deep, including Brian Finneran. Maddox lets it fly all the way downfield. And it was caught. It's caught on the 1. There's no time. The game's over.
Oh, my God. That's definitely one of the crazier ties in NFL history. Vic goes to an NFC championship game, but he derails his career with the off-the-field issues. It's one of the few times Bill Cowher didn't win a game. He was leading by 10 or more points. He's kind of like, who's that? Who's the Sean McVay, the coach of the Rams? If he's leading at the half, he almost always wins. He's kind of got that Sean McVay thing going. The Steelers, we already covered, they go on to beat Cleveland, and they lose in OT at Tennessee. And then once again, Maddox kind of hangs around until, I don't know, some guy from Ohio, Miami of Ohio, comes in and replaces him. So
Yeah, that was a crazy game. That was Michael Vick in his like at his apex of being, really unstoppable. And like you said, probably the craziest thing about that game was, everybody's scoring a boatload of points, and then it goes to overtime and nobody can score. Like I think that was the weirdest thing about that game. It was kind of ironic. And then for the game to end on the 1 yard line on a Hail Mary, definitely a memorable game. I mean, it stunk that the Steelers didn't win, but I mean they also didn't lose. It's definitely a memorable game in Steeler history.
Yeah, it's just like normally like it get like a Hail Mary gets knocked down or tipped around and then hits the ground, but no, this one he completed it, but it didn't count for anything for passing yards. That's the only thing in reception for Plexico. So.
He waits. He throws the pass, and it's intercepted. George Polamalu at the 40, 35, 30.
Steelers versus Ravens is the best rivalry in all of pro sports. And now that series has been chronicled in Pittsburgh versus Baltimore, the unofficial history, an all-new book from the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. Relive all the fierce battles and exciting moments from this amazing rivalry. There were legendary plays like Troy Polamalu's pick six and the immaculate extension, and there were crazy incidents like Joey Porter chasing Ray Lewis into the parking lot, or the Ravens putting a bounty on Hines Ward. We cover all of it, including some stories you may never have heard. Buy a copy for yourself, or get one as a Christmas gift for the Steelers fan in your life. Find it on Amazon, or see the link in the show description of this episode. And thanks for supporting the podcast.
Going back to college football, I kind of have this, I call it the Pitt BC trilogy. And these are the 2002, 2004, and 2020 games. And all these games went to overtime. So we'll run through these. In 2002, Pitt won on an overtime kick. This is a game featuring Super Bowl winning Steeler backup quarterbacks, that of being Brian St. Pierre and Rod Rutherford, if anybody remembers them besides the Brian St. Pierre impersonator guy. I don't think anybody tried to impersonate Rod Rutherford, but it was like a weird game too. Like, I think I've talked about this before. Everybody left with like 2 minutes to go. Like I think Pitt had punted and there was still like 2 or 3 minutes left, but Pitt had all 3 timeouts, and Pitt got the ball back and drove down to kick a game-tying field goal. And like it seemed like once the game went to overtime, everybody that had left came back to their seats. So I don't know if they were just like sitting out in the Great Hall, kind of watching the TV monitors to see if they could get a head start on your rush or what. But just some notes, like I forgot about this guy, David Abdul. He was the kicker for Pitt that year, and he actually after that had some tough luck. He ended up kicking the game-winning field goal after Pitt totally stuffed BC in their half, and Pitt got the ball first, and David Abdul kicked like a 40-yard field goal, and then BC got the ball second, and in their overtime, I think Pitt partially blocked the field goal or something, and it didn't go through, so Pitt won. But David Abdul had definitely some tough luck. His friend Billy Gaines, I don't know if anybody remembers this, had died in front of him in a fall at a church. And the reason they were staying at that church to begin with is because the apartment that they had been staying at had burned down, so they had to have temporary housing in this church. And so, and then later that year, David Abdul, after all that, his apartment burning down, his best friend dying in front of him, he actually held his friend until the paramedics showed up. It was very traumatic. He broke his leg in a car accident, and it was kicking. It was a kicking leg, so he was never really quite the same after that. And for all that, as for the rest of that season, Pitt went on to win the Insight.com Bowl. I think Insight.com is still around. I'm sure it is, but and the highlight of the Insight.com Bowl that year was a fantastic catch by Larry Fitzgerald, which is just an awesome highlight. Maybe we'll put that in the links. So moving on to 2004, I think I covered this in the Walt Harris season. Pitt 20, BC 17. It was a crazy game and a crazy season. Here we got this. Tyler Palco ran over a BC safety in this game. Here we'll play the clip of that.
Here's a flea flicker. Furman back to Palco, and Palco delivers the big hit. Peter Sheehan just got knocked over by the quarterback.
That's Big East football, right? Everyone huddle around. Is Palco okay? Oh, Tyler Palco's already up.
Sheehan wants his hat.
So I don't know if you recognize the voice on the color commentator there. That was one Mike Tomczak. So Mike Tomczak doing some color commentary covering the Pitt Panthers. So that was really like, it seems like so like trivial that like a quarterback running over a safety, but that really like BC was kind of dominating the game till that point, and for whatever reason that fired up. I remember I got fired. I remember I was at that game and I jumped up and I like everybody. You can hear the crowd in the background just go nuts. It's kind of weird that was the play, and it seemed to turn the tide for Pitt. And then of course Darrelle Revis made an amazing tackle on a 4th and goal, and then Pitt kicked the field goal. I think once again Pitt got the ball first in overtime, and they kicked the field goal. And then on I think it was either a 4th down or for one of the plays, like Pitt hit the running back for BC and he fumbled, and Pitt recovered the fumble, and that was it for BC. So as for the aftermath, Pitt went on to the Fiesta Bowl, and they promptly lost to Urban Meyer and Alex Smith, and they kind of went back to mediocrity there for at least a couple seasons until Dave Wannstedt kind of turned things around. Took him 3 years, but
yeah, that was a fun game, and like you said there, you could hear the crowd just go nuts because he just totally ran over the guy for Boston College, and you don't necessarily see. You might see like a Jerome Bettis type player, or somebody like that do that, but to see the quarterback just truck a guy, that fired everybody up, and then it was also weird to see that game end with a fumble. That's the college with their overtime format. A game can end that way, but like literally the guy fumbled, Pitt falls on it, and that's the end of the game because that was their half of the overtime and they needed to score.
I remember holding my breath after the guy fumbled because I wasn't sure if they're going to call it a fumble, and I saw the official running in. And I know I didn't start going nuts until I saw him he signaled with his arm the other way. And as soon as he saw him do that, I remember I just let out the biggest cheer. I was like, yes, And it was just one of those, okay, is it a fumble? Or are they going to call it a fumble? Because it was right in our end zone. I could see the ball hit the ground, and it was kind of close. He was kind of in the air. They hit him, and the running back went in the air and the ball came loose. And it's well, maybe they won't call it. Maybe they will, And Pitt definitely fell on it. It was an obvious recovery. But, yeah, when the official came in and signaled, the other way, you knew it was over. That was a fun one. That was definitely so Pitt's 2-0 versus overtime versus Boston College. And then that was one of the last time. I think that was on BC's way out the door to the ACC. So Pitt would not play Boston College for a while. I think they played them one other time before this next game, which we did cover, and I think, what was it, most Pitt way to lose?
Yep.
So this is 2020. And it's Pitt 30, BC 31. And I call this the Kessman giveth and Kessman taketh away game for the former kicker Alex Kessman, who actually played in the pros this last season and went 2 for 5, missing not the bit of not foreshadowing, but whatever. He missed a bunch of extra points in the pros too. So Pitt plays BC all the way to overtime and forces overtime. And Alex Kessman, in all his glory, he hits a 58-yard field goal to tie the game with under a minute to play. So here we have some audio of that field goal, which is unbelievable.
They better make sure they don't cover up that center. New rule in college football.
58 yards. This would be a career long for Alex Kessman. Good hold, good snap. Puts his foot into it, has some leg, and it's good.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. So that's the Alex Kessman giveth part of our podcast. And it's a 58-yard field goal. And he had done stuff like, I remember he kicked a 55-yarder in the open end of Hyde's Field in the rain. So this kid can kick long field goals. He's got the leg. It's just his accuracy is very wanting, as we'll see. So needing a TD, Pitt picks up so the game goes to overtime. There's a crucial fourth down they pick up, and then they scores what should be the game-tying touchdown. So, unfortunately, now we get to the Kessman taketh away part of our podcast.
Kessman to tie it. And he misses it!
My goodness!
Kessman hit a 58-yard field goal at the end of regulation to send it into overtime, and he missed the extra point in the extra session. Unbelievable.
You better watch out. The cardboard cutouts are rushing the field in Chestnut Hill, Chris.
That's obviously COVID time, so there was nobody there at the game except for the players. But yes, that's the Alex Kessman taketh away part of our podcast. I don't know what to say about that one except for maybe Pitt's finally pulled themselves out of that kind of silliness for a while. So, but that's the way it went that game. So. Fun times, huh? Fun times.
And that's classic. That was such a classic Pitt loss. Like, if you had no idea what it was like to be a Pitt fan, I'd say just watch that game, because a normal team would just have missed the almost 60-yard field goal at the end of regulation, or they would have not scored a touchdown to tie it up in overtime, right? Like, that's how a normal team loses. But Pitt, like, they can't. They have to think of, like, unfathomable ways to lose football games that, like, well, this has never happened before. What if he makes the longest field goal in the history of the school and then misses an easy extra point that I could kick? What if we did that? It's like they're sitting in a script room writing this out. So, yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I mean, that's what made this last season so special was, they actually didn't do all that. And I'm still in shock, because so many years, so many decades of us sitting through games like this. But yeah, that was just classic Pitt.
The aftermath is Pitt does get 6 wins, but they lost to Notre Dame 45-3 and Clemson 52-17 in blowout fashion. So and I totally respect them for this. And maybe it was just because it was COVID and there weren't a lot of bowl games. They didn't go to a bowl game. And for 6 wins in that season, I think that was total. I wish they would do that more often. Like, in a season like that, it's just like, no, we're not going to a bowl game, But good for Pitt. And maybe that the football gods kind of rewarded them with this season, since, they didn't go to a bowl game. I don't know. You believe in the football gods there. Continuing on with our there's a lot of misery on this. I apologize for anyone who needs therapy after this one. All right, well, here we go. Settle into your seats, get your comfy cushions, load up on the snacks, because it's going to be a long time. And that would be the Pens Flyers 5 overtime game in 2000. And I don't think we've really covered this game in any way, shape, or form, have we?
No, I don't think
so. This probably is one that deserves its own podcast, and we probably have to in some point in the near future. So the Pens and Flyers meet in the playoffs, and the Pens lead the series 2-1. And the score, literally, they tied the score, and the score stayed tied for 5 overtimes. And I didn't write down. Do you remember when they scored during this game? Like, was it in the third period? I didn't write that down, but
yeah, I don't remember. I just remember that they didn't score in the first 4.5 overtimes.
It literally, the game took in real time 7 hours to play. 7 hours. I mean, I can't think of. I mean, cricket sometimes takes like 8 hours or a day or two to play, but I can't think of any other activity besides, like, even work. I mean, that takes 7. I can't think of anything else. I don't know. Wow. 7 hours. It ended at 2:35 in the morning. The concession stands ran out of food. It was so late. Like, I guess like they had ordered pizzas, but like, I guess it got so late that there were no more pizza places open after a certain time in the morning. So there was no pizza left. There was no food. Keith Primeau finally puts us all out of our misery and scores 7 minutes and 59 seconds to go in the 5th overtime. Just for Penguins goalie Ron Tugnutt made 70 saves. And of course, Ron Tough Luck was kind of his nickname. The Flyers goalie, Brian Boucher, he made 58 saves himself. And I think it was 3-2 was the final. I think the final's 3-2. And after that, obviously, I mean, the Penguins lose the next 2 games in the series. Just whoever won that game at that point was probably going to win the series. And the Penguins don't beat the Flyers in the playoffs until the 2008 Eastern Conference Finals, which is unbelievable. They went literally from 1967 to 2008, and they never beat the Flyers in the playoffs. But here we'll play the unfortunate highlight of this goal here.
It's able to come out relatively easy. It's Keith Primeau with it first. Primeau cuts the inside, scores! There it is! Keith Primeau, the much maligned center of the Philadelphia Flyers, wins this game in the 5th overtime.
So, like, I don't know who was all there at 2:30 in the morning in the Civic Arena to celebrate that, but Keith Primeau was, and Keith Jones, and that I didn't write. Is that I think that's still one of the longest game in NHL history too. There might be one that's longer, but
yeah, I think there was like a game in the 30s or something. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of the modern era, and there was a game a couple of years ago that went, I think, almost that long. But it would be harder to have that kind of game today because of the rules that they've changed since the year 2000, where they've made it a little more open, a little more offensively geared. That was the dead puck era where the New Jersey Devils and teams like that were just grinding everybody to a halt. And I remember that the thing I remember about that game was the overtime period would start. There'd be a lot of skating for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes of the overtime would just be, a lot of just back and forth, no real good scoring chances. Like, the ice was bad. It was like if you were going to score, you had to do it early. And I think what was that goal, the Keith Primeau goal, Steve? Like 7 minutes into that overtime.
Yeah, it was an odd time to score it, but like there's interviews like I read so like Yager was like, he said that I figured he said though like one of his teammates like, can you please just score to end this game? Like everybody was tired, nobody could move. Like you said, I mean they played literally 2 games. Yeah, for 4 overtimes. That's 2 games, and that's 7 periods of hockey.
Yeah, they were literally halfway through a 3rd game, right? Am I doing the math correctly?
It's 5 overtimes, so
yeah, 3 periods, 3 overtimes. That's 2 games, then a 4th and a 5th. So they were literally halfway through a 3rd game. That's insane.
No wonder they ran out of food. Moving on to even more depressing Penguins overtime stuff. And this one hurts. I think this one, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really do an aftermath on the Penguins Flyers one. I think that, I don't know if that or the Kasperitis. No, see that they still made the playoffs after that game. So the Penguins didn't really, we'll go over that a little later, but the Penguins Islanders, and this was overtime too. This is 1993, the David Volek goal. And the Penguins are looking for the three-peat. It would have been the first three-peat since actually the Islanders in the 80s. They actually won the President's Trophy for the best regular season record. I think they had a 16 or 17 game winning streak during the season. They have 4 players that score 100 points. I don't know. They have a ton of Hall of Famers on the team. But this Islanders team, they're a plucky team, and they're coached by Al Arbor, who was the coach when they won all those 4 Stanley Cups in a row. So this guy knows how to coach and knows how to win. And like I said, the Islanders, they do force a Game 7, and they get the game to overtime, where we'll pick it up with, I guess, David Volek in all his glory here.
With Ferraro, here they come, 2-on-1. Volek shoots, scores! David Volek, Islanders, and they'll be a new Stanley Cup champion in 1993.
So, I don't know what to say about that one, except for, the aftermath is the Islanders did lose. They had to play Montreal the next series, and Montreal was on like this magical run with Patrick Roy. Patrick Roy was playing it out of his mind, and they did lose to Montreal, and Montreal went on to win the Stanley Cup. And I think, if I'm not, that's still the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup, correct? Yep. So 1993. So they're getting into Bengals territory with stuff there. The Penguins, unfortunately, they lose the dynasty. Everybody blames like Scotty Bowman, because Scotty Bowman was the problem there. Unfortunately, the Penguins declare bankruptcy, and they don't really win another cup for 20 years. They don't really compete. I mean, we'll see here in the next thing, but they really kind of I don't know if they made the finals one other time before the lockout, right? Yeah, I guess was that against Florida? Yeah, I think that's the only other time.
The conference finals, yeah.
Yeah,
that hurt. That was their best team. I mean, the 93 team was better than the 91 and the 92 teams. It was just their best team that they ever had. And it sucks that the Penguins' top 5 worst moments ever are all against the stupid New York Islanders. I hate that franchise so much. It's and the Flyers ones, that hurt because it was the Flyers and you hate the Flyers so much. But they would have had to play the Devils in the conference finals had they won that series, and the Devils were way better. Or they would have had to play Dallas in the Stanley Cup final. The Penguins were just in 2000. They were kind of on a magical run with Ron Tugnut, a veteran goalie. They weren't that good of a team. But 93, I mean, and they would have played Wayne Gretzky. It would have been Mario Lemieux versus Wayne Gretzky in the finals.
Kings, because the Kings, they had to play the Kings.
Yeah. And that whole rivalry, that would have been so good for hockey. That would have been so good for Mario's legacy. It just, to have David Volek for that goal, that just, to this day, it still really, really hurts.
It's probably one of the bigger disappointments in Pittsburgh sports history, quite honestly. Going to a more positive Penguins moment, the Darius Kasparaitis goal in overtime of 2001. And I think we've covered this in another podcast. The Penguins play Buffalo in Buffalo. I think this was a series winning goal. Was this Game 6?
It was Game 7.
It was Game 7, yeah.
Yeah.
They have Jágr and Mario. But the Sabres, once again, if you have a goalie in hockey, it's kind of like a quarterback in football. You can pull rabbits out of the hat with a pretty mediocre team. And Hasek, he just keeps the Sabres in the series, just making amazing save after amazing save. And, of course, it goes into overtime when Kasparaitis scores his now famous goal. And some fun with this.
Taken over on the play is Robert Lang. He's got a Traeger. Here's Kasparaitis. Wristing one. He shoots and scores. The Pittsburgh Penguins have won the series in overtime. Darius Kasparaitis. And ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building.
So that's a much more fun moment to relive. He beats what was his quote after beating Kasparaitis? Man, he had a fun quote.
He said something like I guess he had scored against Hasek once before, and he said, "I own that guy now." And I mean, he was he wasn't being cocky, he was being silly, but it was just classic Darius Kasparaitis.
So the aftermath, the Penguins, like we said, they lost to the Devils in the conference finals. And then the next season, they basically trade Jágr for a hot dog and tickets to the Washington Monument. And they enter a serious down period in the franchise history, and they go through bankruptcy again and the lockout, and they really don't recover until 2008 with that, when they make the playoffs again against the Senators. So, and then the Winter Classic and all that. So this really was their last kind of, like, it could have been like, that could have been the Penguins' last like hurrah in Pittsburgh if, Mario hadn't saved them. So could be saying Darius Kasparaitis' goal in overtime was the Penguins' last like kind of shining moment, but thank God we don't have to say that, huh?
Yes.
Sticking with the happy theme for the Penguins, seems like the Penguins have had a lot more success in overtime than the Steelers Pitt had a couple good runs there. Nick Bonino goal. He eliminates the Capitals in 2016, the Game 6. Do you remember taking the SAT, Tim?
Yes.
Okay, here's an SAT question for you, and maybe we should petition them to put this on. Islanders are to Penguins as Penguins are to blank.
That would be the Washington Capitals.
Yes. Or you could go, I would say, Islanders are to Penguins as Steelers are to Indianapolis Colts. It's just, or the Jets. It's just for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. It beats them. So, so the Capitals and the Penguins meet again in the playoffs, and once again the Penguins get the better of the team from Washington. And the Capitals were the favorites to win the Cup that year. I remember a lot of people picked them to beat the Penguins in this series, and it wasn't it wasn't unreasonable. Like, well, that's not wasn't like you didn't feel like it was just being you're just being biased. You thought, well, that's probably reasonable. They're a really good team. But unfortunately for the Capitals, the HBK line was absolutely unstoppable. And here we'll have some fun listening to some Capitals misery here.
As Hagelin moving to the net, it's spiked down to the air by Chorney and laid around behind. Kessel up with it there. Fed one around in front. Hagelin is shot. It's over! Lucky number 13, Nick Bonino, has ended the series for the Penguins.
My favorite part of that highlight clip is that like Doc Emmerich's like really good with hockey, so he waits till they're done blowing the horn, right? And as soon as he tries to talk, I was like, "F you, Doc Emmerich!" Good move by the guy in the horn, but no, I love Doc Emmerich. Yeah, if it was like Keith Jones or Mike Milbury, it would have been even better. But that was just funny, and of course the poor Capitals, they're the Washington Generals to the Pittsburgh Penguins, Harlem Globetrotters, and they just can't catch a break. So, and the aftermath, the Penguins go on to win the Cup, and they repeat as Cup winners the next year also. The Caps do finally get there to win a Cup, and they have to do it in 2018 by beating the Penguins. So maybe the Capitals have kind of had that monkey off their back, the catharsis, finally beating their, nemesis, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So.
Yeah, and good for them. I mean, Ovechkin was destined to win one eventually. So I don't know. I wasn't happy for them, but I was kind of happy for them a little bit. I didn't want them to beat us to get there, but it still felt good that Bonino scoring that overtime goal. That was the year the Capitals actually had won the President's Trophy that year.
Yeah.
So to your point, everybody was picking them to win the Cup, and it just felt so good to beat them again.
Yeah, it was like odd. It was like, was that the series where I remember they kind of dominated, and we just would it seemed like they would be in our end, and then we would just like counterattack and get a goal. It was an odd series, if I remember correctly.
They were. I mean, you could argue that they were the better team, but we just played the better series. I'm happy with that assessment. I mean, we won, so that's all that matters.
Moving on to teams that, for some reason, Pittsburgh owns. That would be Steelers Jets 2004, and this one has to be painful for Jets fans, and they've had their painful memories there. The Steelers are 15-1, and they're having a magical season. They have rookie quarterback Ben Roethlisberger playing well. The Jets are coming into Heinz Field, and they have Chad Pennington and Curtis Martin. So the game goes to overtime, and the game goes to overtime because Doug O'Brien misses 2 field goals in regulation. The Steelers defense holds the Jets in overtime, and Ben drives the Steelers down for a 30-yard field goal to win it for them. We'll listen to the fun and frivolity here.
Crowd will tell you whether the Jets win. He missed it. Well, let's play some overtime.
So he definitely misses it, and Dan Dierdorf is very disappointed. So we'll go to the so we'll play the game winner here by Mr. Jeff Reed here.
Number 3 from 33. And the 16-1 Steelers move on.
This is a crazy game. I still can't believe they won this game, and this is like how many years ago? I mean, they did have no business winning this game. Like, Ben played a really bad game, and I think they gave up a special teams kick return for a touchdown in this one. And this was ugly. Doug O'Brien, this was like, because Heinz Field's really tough to kick in. So like a 43-yard field goal is almost like a 50-plus yard field goal. And Jeff Reed, like, you can't, like, if you watch the replay of that his field goal, the game winner, was drifting to the right too. It just got through just in time. So, and that was in the open end. Jeff Reed had to kick that in the open end. So, but Jeff Reed was like really good at kicking in Heinz Field in the bad old days there of Heinz Field. So, but I mean, a great win for the Steelers. Poor loss for the Jets. The aftermath was the Steelers lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. Maybe the Patriots stole some signals. Maybe they didn't. Who knows? We'll never know. But the Patriots won the Super Bowl that year. As for the Jets and Herm Edwards, he did play to win the game, but it didn't work out so well for Herm, because he actually, in one of the rare instances that a coach got traded, he got traded to Kansas City in 2006. And boy, that really is a Jets move, isn't it? They just traded their coach a couple years, like 2 years later. It's like, we're going to trade you to Kansas City.
The amazing thing about that era, Steve, was how many seasons came down to a field goal. So 2002, you had the Joe Nedney kick that we covered. 2004, you had this Jets game. 2005, you had the Vanderjagt kick in the Colts game. And then 2007, Jacksonville eliminated us on a last-second field goal. So you literally had like 4 straight playoffs that, 2 went against us and 2 went for us, where everything came down to a kick. It was just crazy how many games came down to a field goal attempt back in that time frame.
Yeah, and it, I guess, like you said, it was kind of like a mixed bag with the Steelers. I mean, I guess when you go to overtime, anything, it just proves anything can happen. The ball can bounce anyway, once, and the kicker could miss a couple field goal. Like, that was tough. That was a tough way for the Jets to go out, So, moving back to hockey and happy memories. Brooks Orpik eliminates the Islanders in 2013 Game 6. I think this is the only time the Penguins have beat the Islanders in the playoffs.
It is the only time they've beaten them in the playoffs. It's like the only happy Islander memory of all ever. So let's for sure celebrate it.
Bask in the glory of Brooks Orpik here. The Pens finished the season at the top of the Eastern Conference, and they're playing the Islanders. And actually, Thomas Vokoun replaced Marc-Andre Fleury in this series. And Brooks Orpik, he picked a really good time to score his first playoff goal.
Malkin holds the puck in for Kennedy. The return to Malkin. Now Orpik with a drive. He scores! Brooks Orpik sends the Pittsburgh Penguins to a second-round meeting with the Ottawa Senators.
at the 7:49 mark of overtime.
And the best part, that was in New York. That was in the old Nassau Coliseum, I think, too. So
right in the middle of their stupid chant, too. That was the best thing about that. Just like they were in the middle. Let's go. Oh,
oh, our season's over.
take that, Islander fans, and all the other times you killed us.
Yeah, and your 4 Stanley Cups, and coming back from 3 game, no wins to 3 games. Yeah, what was it, 3 game deficit? Yeah. I think what the Penguins lost in the conference finals, I think, to Boston that year.
Yes, they did.
And it was like a 4-game sweep, so it wasn't even really that close. The Penguins, unfortunately, they don't win another cup until they go through 2 more coaches and a general manager. So that was kind of like one of the few highlights, I guess, of that 2013 kind of till 2016. So moving from hockey to football, Pitt WVU 1997, the backyard brawl. So the background, this is Walt Harris's first year at Pitt, and he takes a dismal team. They hadn't won more than 4 games or 3 games in, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, maybe longer. And gets them to a 5-win season. So it's the last game of the year, and that, back when sanity ruled college football, you would play your rival. And Pitt's biggest rival at that time, because Joe Paterno didn't want to play us every year, was no, I guess they did play Penn State every year in the 90s too. But yeah, they the big rival was definitely West Virginia. Outside of Penn State, Notre Dame, West Virginia is definitely one of the bigger rivals. But yeah, I would probably rank it Penn State, West Virginia, Notre Dame in Pitt rival land. Yeah, that's how I would rank them. Yeah,
I would agree.
Yeah. So so Pitt needs this to become bowl eligible. West Virginia just wants to ruin Pitt's season. They just want to beat Pitt. They don't like Pitt. They express it in their own little special cheer. So, and the game is against WVU, and it's in Morgantown. So, the game goes to overtime, and it goes to triple overtime, and because this is after they changed the rules to you couldn't end in a tie. So, down 38-35, and with Pitt on the 32-yard line. And having a 50-yard field goal with a not very good kicker, Walt Harris decides to go for it on 4th and 17. And Pete Gonzalez actually completes a pass to Jake Hofert for the first down.
They need 17 for a first down. Gonzalez complete. First down. Hofert.
What a gutsy call. Wow, my goodness.
Terry Murphy catches a TD pass a couple plays later. We'll play this for you.
It is 2nd and 10 from the 13. Gonzalez to the end zone. It's caught. Touchdown. Terry Murphy, and the Panthers have won it.
Well, there you heard it. Terry Murphy pulls one out. Jake Hofert pulls out probably the bigger play, 4th and 17. That's unbelievable that they converted that. And really, it was the first time they got to 6 wins in a long time. It kind of respectability, not like greatness, not like they had a great season. But so, I mean, they're back to being respectable. They're not a total doormat and laughingstock. The aftermath, it's they're respectable. Pitt goes on to get blown out in the Liberty Bowl 41-7 by a Brett Favre-less Southern Miss team. So I don't know who was on that old Southern Miss team, but it wasn't anybody. I'd have to look up who's note. Walt Harris brought the team back, but never really got them over the hump. They kind of got to the 6-7 win mark every year with him, and they just never could go any farther. And finally, he kind of criticized the university and stuff, and that was kind of the end of Walt Harris. And that's kind of how it went for that Pitt team in '96. So on that note, I think that's a good way to end the podcast of overtimes on a successful Pitt touchdown there. Kind of make up for some of the bad, but just never know, Tim. You never know which way it's going to go in these overtimes. I think is the biggest one, and I don't know. Maybe it just seems like we had a lot more negative on this list than positive. I don't know. Did I miss any positive ones that you can think of, or off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, the Chris Kunitz goal that put the Penguins in the Stanley Cup final in 2017. I that one was a great memory for me because I remember just that was in the second overtime, and it dawned on me at some point during that overtime, like it was Game 7, and I thought I'm either going to see one of the great moments in the history of me being a fan of this team or one of the worst moments, right? Similar to that Islanders Game 7. It's like when it's Game 7, it's like this is either going to be amazing, memorable, you're going to want to relive it years later, or it's going to really hurt every time you think about it. And those moments are, those don't come about often, and that was a great moment. So that's the only one I can think of that that you didn't hit.
Oversight on my part, but Craig Anderson really played well that series, if I remember correctly. And, the Penguins were kind of fortunate to get one by them there in overtime. But I think the Penguins were the better team, definitely, in that series. It's just, once again, a goalie in hockey, man. You don't have to have the greatest team in the world. If you just have a really good goalie, it really evens everything out. So thanks for listening. Check us out on the web, on Twitter. We always appreciate word of mouth and giving us likes, or just recommend us or friend us on, or follow us on Twitter. So for Steve Word and Tim Hannon, thanks for listening in.